And a pleasant good evening to all of you. Welcome to the Canes Corner podcast. I am Adam Gold, and we're brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina, don't you know? I want to say that again. Welcome to the Canes Corner podcast. I'm Adam Gold. We're brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. If it's for the exterior of your home, you can find it at the Aluminum Company of North Carolina on Hamlin Road in Durham. No place like it. Sammy Han and his crew do a great job. You should check them out. They've got everything you need to better the exterior of your home: siding, roofing, windows, entry doors, storm doors, gutter helmets. If you don't know what a gutter helmet is, you should find out. Hold on 1 second while I drink some tea. Sipping tea like the old meme. That's what Spencer Martin's doing as the former Columbus Blue Jacket comes back to haunt his old mates, sort of. I don't think Spencer Martin is necessarily the reason why the Carolina Hurricanes picked up a 4-2 win. He certainly didn't hurt him. Spencer played well. Sure, circumstances around the two goals. I think he likes the first one less than the second one. I don't really think you can blame him on the second one. It's deflected right off the shot. And I know people want to think that that's an easy play to make. It's certainly makeable. It's a save that he could make. But when it changes direction, when you see it coming off the shot and it changes directions like it did, I just think it's a little bit difficult to pick up because it's hard to see that. It's hard to see the change of direction. Anyway, I don't have to explain it. You just have to believe that I'm right. All right. Hurricanes pick up a 4-2 win over Columbus. There's a couple of things I want to get to as I sip more tea. And it's lovely tea. English breakfast, Twinings. Recommended highly if you're not looking for something stronger. If you're looking for something stronger, probably Twinings English breakfast tea is not what you want. All right, let's get to some things. We'll also go into some comments as well. Because we have some things to talk about, and we're going to get into a little bit of trade deadline discussion tonight. And I'm not sure tonight's game is really worth dissecting too much, but there were a couple of things that I drew out of it that I liked. First of all, this is after the first period in Minnesota. Carolina defensively was really, really good. I didn't think their forward line was great in the second period in Minnesota, none of them. But I thought everybody was better in the third, but I loved Carolina's defensive effort in the second and third periods in Minnesota, and that continued tonight. Were there chances for Columbus? Yeah, sometimes, and Spencer, I thought, played very well at most of the time. But I thought this was another good night for Carolina on the blue line. I thought Skjei and Pesce were exceptional tonight. They were combined +7. Huh. Yeah. And Brady Skjei got an assist. And actually, did he get 2 assists? Brett Pesce got 2 assists tonight. Brady Skjei had a 2-point night. But Skjei, the goal that Skjei scored was just spectacular. That was the best goal of the night. And by the way, second game back for Jalen Chatfield, and he was delicious. Jalen Chatfield was great tonight. And he was great in his first game back in Minnesota. And not that Tony DeAngelo didn't play well, because I think we would be unfair to Tony if we didn't credit him with playing really well under difficult circumstances. But Jalen Chatfield changes their defense in such a way that Carolina, they don't have to protect. Like, again, I'm Team Tony. I am a fan of DeAngelo, the player. I recognize the deficiencies that he's got. He's an offensive guy, and I don't like him paired with Dmitry Orlov. But there's a value to Tony, and I think what we learned for 4 games is that given whatever happens in the playoffs, if you need to draw your 7th defenseman in, Tony isn't going to hurt you. But you do have to be aware of who's on the ice with Tony. And that's the difference when Jalen Chatfield is in your team. Because when Chatfield's in the 6, I mean, what Carolina has essentially is a top pair or two top pairs and a second pair, because Skjei and Pesce are pretty much as good as anybody's top pair, even with them not having a great year as a tandem this year. And I think, just between you, me, and the lamppost, I actually believe that Skjei's had the better year. And if, the Politburo, if the people who make the decisions upstairs, if they decide that they could only re-sign one of Skjei and Pesce, as much as I love Brett Pesce, I think the better player right now is Brady Skjei. Not to mention he gives you a little bit more offensive juice. Better skater, too, at this point. But I'd love to keep both, to be honest. All right. Let's go through some things, and let's say hello to our friends in California and in Adelaide, Australia. And I don't know if there's anybody in Hawaii or Alaska or Dublin. I don't know. I don't know why you'd be up in Dublin right now. It's a little bit before 4 in the morning in Dublin. Shouts to you. Anyway, so shouts to all of you. And again, Canes Corner Podcast, always live on YouTube. Hey, drop me a tweet if you want at @agoldfan on Twitter. And, follow and subscribe and do all of that, because we're here after every Hurricanes game, as you know. I thought for the first time in a while, two things happened with Carolina's top line. One, they were great. Really, as a line, they were great. We get hypercritical, sensitive about Aho, Svechnikov, and to a lesser extent, Teravainen. We want them to be great. And when they're not great, we go, what's wrong? I would say that both guys have been okay. But that's not what the standard is for Aho and Svechnikov. Okay isn't the standard. Okay is not really okay. I don't think either player was a negative for Carolina, but you don't get paid almost, we're a year or a season away from it, $9.75 and $7.75 million a year to just be okay. But tonight, that top line was excellent, really good. And what was better about the fact that they scored 2 goals was how they created the 2 goals. And by the way, the 2 should have been more. Svechnikov could have scored more. Aho could have scored more. Those guys dominated in terms of grade A scoring chances. I believe Aho and Svechnikov each had 3. I think Svech might have had 4. Andre's still fighting his confidence a little bit. As I said in the Minnesota game, I'm not sure you gain confidence from a shot you kind of whiff on, even though it went in. But the forecheck was back with those guys. And that was what was so encouraging about the goal, was that the forecheck was evident with those guys. So good for Carolina to get that line going. And we'll talk about it in terms of the deadline in a little bit. But I thought the top line, for the first time on the trip, for the first time since Svechnikov came back, I thought they imposed their will on the game. And that's what all great teams need. Great teams need a constant. And I'm not trying to draw a comparison in the player here. But when you played Boston in years past, Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak, good luck. Every time they stepped on the ice, you were holding your breath. When you play Edmonton, every time McDavid comes on the ice, you're holding. It doesn't make a difference who he's playing with. You're holding your breath. So you have to be cognizant of that. When you're playing against Florida, when Tkachuk's on the ice or Barkov's on the ice, you are just, all right, let's just get through this. And if you're going to win a Stanley Cup, Aho, Svechnikov, Teravainen, or whoever that line is, you have to be able to know that you're going to get that kind of performance. So Carolina needs to get to that. Those guys need to get to that. And if you go back to that, it was about a 12-game stretch. It was the beginning of this long run, really, for Carolina, where from the Ottawa game for about a dozen games, they went 8-1-3. And Aho had, I believe, 6 games with at least 3 points in it. And I think one of them had 4, or 5 games with at least 3 points in it. And one of those games, he had 4 points. So he was dominant. He had 7 goals and 17 assists in 12 games. So we need to get back to that. Or, I mean, you're not going to do that, but you need to get back to every night being dangerous on the puck. And again, it was about the forecheck with those guys tonight. First period, I loved the Drury line. I didn't think it was as good the rest of the way, but I thought for the first period, they were great. And I thought the Marty Necas element of that was the best part of it. And I'm not sure Necas wasn't good all night long. And he has been really good. Now 16 games since coming back from the injury. I think he's been excellent. And this is the Marty Necas that is necessary for this team. But he did not get on the score sheet tonight. Well, he was, and then they took it away. Michael Bunting was offside. I understand on TV, because I was watching the same game you were from home. And ESPN and their ESPN Plus, Hulu Plus, Disney hockey coverage is but the replay they showed us of the offside wasn't definitive, to say the least. But here's what you need to know is that in Toronto, where they make these decisions, they've got the camera right on the blue line. So they know if Bunting's skate was up off the ice, if it was out already inside the offensive zone. So I'm going to assume it was. They also didn't take a ton of time, so it must have been clear. So unfortunately, Marty Necas had the goal waved off, but it was a great shot. But I thought the Drury line of the first period was great until Jack gave the puck away. If you're going to throw a blind pass or, behind the back pass or whatever it is out into the slot, you got to know a teammate's there. You just have to. And Brent Burns had come down the slot. And he was well below the play. And all of a sudden it goes the other way as a 3-on-1. And this is the goal that Spencer Martin probably wants back, in that it's a 3-on-1. The puck's all the way on the left side with Cole Sillinger, and Slavin is diving to take away the pass. So Martin knows it's not going to be a pass. It's going to be a shot. And he got beat near side. Not great. Not great, Bob. That made it 2-1. And, Columbus was able to just kind of stay around and be viable in the game. And then Martin had to make a couple of really good saves, I thought, on the when it was 2-1. Some really good saves when it was 2-1 to keep it 2-1. So that's probably the best part of Martin's game. But he made some good saves tonight. First goal worse than the second goal, because I think the second goal was deflected right off the shot. Slavin got it. And it wasn't immediately off the shot, but it was probably 10 feet after the shot. Slavin's stick just deflected it slightly. It was more like the shaft of his stick. And it beat Martin up high. But again, so for the most part, the Drury line has been excellent. Bunting and Necas have been really good. I think Necas has been great. And they need that line to keep going. Now we just need to get Koch and Niemi going, and it'll lead us into another discussion before we get out of here. And I already mentioned the defense, and absolutely loved Skjei and Pesce tonight. I thought Skjei, to me, got one of my stars. I thought there was a lot of competition for stars. I think everybody on the Aho line deserved it. I did think that Aho was the best player. He got my first. Teravainen got my third star. Brady Skjei got my second, but I thought Pesce was good. I thought Jalen Chatfield was good. I thought both Slavin and Burns were good. Honestly, we could just pencil in Jacob Slavin for one of the 3 stars every night, and we'd almost always be right. But those are the guys I really liked tonight. All right, since the game was maybe not the greatest game, the first period was just a lot of cardio. And the second period was a little bit helter-skelter, but I loved Carolina's game in the second period. Let's talk a little bit about the trade deadline. And I'll just start with the Elliot Friedman nugget today, in which the Vancouver Canucks are going back to the grind, trying to sign Elias Pettersson to a long-term contract. He is their superstar center. Relatively young guy, not much older, maybe 1 year older than out of the Svechnikov draft. Something like that. I don't know what it is, but he is getting a long-term, big-time contract. And Elliott said, after exploring a trade with the Carolina Hurricanes, and I went, huh? Well, you see, this would fit the bill of what the Hurricanes value at this time of the year. They do not do rentals. They do not do rentals that will cost them anything. So, for the people who want to see Jake Gensel traded for, unless Gensel is coming here already having agreed to a contract extension, which, I mean, could happen, although he is an unrestricted free agent, not a restricted free agent, then that is not going to happen. The Hurricanes are not going to give up the assets for 2 months of a player, plus whatever you can get out of them in the postseason. So it's actually not even 2 months. It's 5 weeks before the regular season ends. And you don't know what happens in the playoffs, no matter how good you are. You could, Boston had 1,000 points last year and lost in the first round. So the Hurricanes aren't going to do a rental, not at that level. Will they do, improving around the edges of the team? Depth defenseman, depth forward, right-handed center who could, with some sandpaper-ish things, somebody like that who's an unrestricted free agent after the year, yeah, they'll do that. But in terms of adding somebody major, it ain't going to happen if he's a UFA unless they know they can sign him. Just will not happen. Pettersson is not a UFA. He's an RFA. And the other part of that is, who would have had to go the other way? Like, I'm not kidding. I am not joking. Who goes the other way in that trade? Because the only way Vancouver is making that deal is if Vancouver is getting a stud back. Now, are we talking about the rights to Nikishin, the Russian defenseman? I don't think Carolina's ever giving him up. Are we talking about multiple first-round picks? Are we talking about picks and Scott Morrow, the defenseman from UMass, who they think could be in the NHL even next year? Are they talking about, I mean, they don't really have other top minor league prospects. Are they talking about Necas? Are they talking about, I mean, I don't know, right? I'm not sure. What you think it would have to be a center. Like, I honestly don't know, but are you talking about Aho? I don't know what would have to go the other way. Pettersson is that good. So that was a shock to read. I'm not entirely sure that Carolina would have really been in it, push comes to shove. The offer for Timo Meier last year was not quite as good as what the Devils gave up, and that was a lot. But Meier was a type of a player they felt like they could really pursue, but it would not have cost them. It didn't cost the Devils major pieces off their roster. It was more about futures, which I think Carolina would be more willing to part with. But if Vancouver is trading Pettersson, and I bet they don't, that's costing you players off your roster. Vancouver has a chance to win a Stanley Cup. They're good, legitimately good. They're getting great goaltending. They have an awesome team. So I don't see that. I have a hard time believing that one with Carolina. So now let's get into one big picture thought, and then I'll give you a couple of players, 3 players maybe that I like. Maybe 4. Big picture thought. No matter who you add, pick the best player. Let's say Jake Guentzel. And let's say Pittsburgh takes 2 number 1 picks, Morrow and Ponomarev. Whatever. And maybe some other, Felix Unger Sorum. Whatever it is. Doesn't matter. I'm making up a package here. And you're able to sign Guentzel. It doesn't matter. It will make no impact unless Aho, Svechnikov, Teravainen, Jarvis, unless those guys produce offense. I said this before the season started last year, not this past summer, the summer before. We were talking about how do the Hurricanes get better, blah, 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 blah. Got to add offense, yeah, they do. But the biggest improvement was always going to come from within. And that's the same thing here. Carolina's biggest improvement has to come from the existing players. If the Hurricanes want to win a Stanley Cup, they need, 50% more from Aho. Same with Svechnikov. Same with Teravainen. That's what has to happen. Doesn't matter. You're not going to add. There's no one piece in the deadline that's suddenly going to make everything better. It just isn't going to happen. So while we sit here and go, we need to do this, we need to do that, none of it matters if Aho, and really you can boil it down to Aho and Svechnikov. Your 2 stars better be great. So pressure's on. Now, as for a couple of players I would be interested in. Yeah, you'd be silly not to be interested in Guentzel, but A, I think it would cost too much. B, you'd have to know you can re-sign him. He's older. He's 29. The Hurricanes are not. Tom Dundon is not giving a 29-year-old forward who is a scorer, yes, but Dundon is not going to give that guy an 8-year contract. That is not going to happen. So, as much as I would like Jake Guentzel, let's cross it off the list. Next, and Greg Wyshynski brought this up in his piece on ESPN. Pavel Buchnevich is available, apparently. Now, big, scores, skates, defends. Big, scores, skates, defends. Late 20s, 28. Big game experience, Rangers. Blues have been good, but more importantly, he has a year left on his contract. It's like 5.8 or something like that. For one more year? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. I think he's got a modified no movement clause, but I'm going to guess that Pavel Buchnevich would be amenable to a move to Raleigh. What will it cost? I mean, something not quite, but similar to what Vancouver gave to Calgary. So you're a first-round pick, a couple of prospects, and maybe an additional draft pick, and maybe somebody off your roster. Could you convince St. Louis that roster player is named Jesperi? I don't know. I don't think they're giving Martin Necas up for him. I don't think you're doing that. At this point, you're rearranging deck chairs. What you're trying to do is add offense. So I personally don't believe Martin Necas is going to get dealt. Not in the not now. I think that's a move you make in the offseason if you're going to make it. And as much as I've talked to Trip Tracy about this, I personally think that the Hurricanes need to see one more time what Necas is in the postseason. Because I'll be honest, I've been critical of Marty, and the Necas I've seen since he came back from the injury, that's a Necas you keep. You figure out a way. I mean, pending what the price is, but that's what I would do. Certainly you see through in the playoffs. You see it through this playoff season. And then if you decide, yeah, I don't think so, or the price is going to be here, I'm not sure he's going to do that again, then you make your move in the summer, and you get, I think, better value for him. You're not using him to get another piece. But Buchnevich with a year left on his deal, I think that's pretty good. So that would be something I would pursue. Adam Henrique, I know. I mean, I think he's a valuable piece, but I think all you do is you put him in place of Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and I think you get marginally better. You know, he could play a wing, but tell me the wing that you're taking out for Adam Henrique. It's not like you're putting Yari Curry on the ice. So who's the wing you're taking out in place of Adam Henrique if you don't put him at center? Now, the Hurricanes' weakest spot among their forward lines is Jesperi Kotkaniemi. He's forward number 12 for me. I don't think you're taking Jesper Fast out of the lineup unless you're adding a bona fide scorer. And I don't think you're taking Stefan Nason out of the lineup. So who's the wing that's coming out? Okay. So if we're looking at centers, it's Kotkaniemi that comes out. I just don't know that Adam Henrique is enough of an advantage, enough of an upgrade over Kotkaniemi. And it's slight, but again, it doesn't change the calculus of your team. So now let me give you two names that I think do. What level of interest these teams have in moving these players, or what level of interest the Hurricanes have in these players, I don't know. And I'll start with Nick Bjugstad from Arizona. Big, right-handed center, can kill penalties, skates pretty well, can score a little bit. Was dealt to Edmonton at the deadline last year, played well for Edmonton. I don't know if Arizona is interested, but if I were the Hurricanes, I would certainly inquire within. And I know as soon as I bring up Arizona, people are, go get Schmaltz. I just roll my eyes at Nick Schmaltz, or whatever his name is. He's a fine player. He doesn't really change the calculus of this team. He's not an all-situation player anyway. He's not great. He's right-handed and he's a center, but he's not awesome at it. He will score, but he's not that good. So I don't want to hear about that. But Bjugstad I like. Don't know if he's available. I know they like him in Arizona, and he has another year left in his contract. And the other guy, I kind of really like. And I don't know if he's available because he is a captain, but we saw him tonight. I wouldn't be against seeing if Boone Jenner wants to come to Carolina, because I think Boone Jenner gives you a couple things if you could pry him away. The first is he's kind of a grimy player. He's a little attitudey player. And I kind of like that. Plus, he's a center. And even though he plays well up in the Columbus lineup, you don't have to go back too far where Boone Jenner was a fourth-line center. And on this team, he could play there, or he could replace Jack in the middle. I love Jack Drury's future. I think Jack Drury ultimately down the road is probably a third center for the Hurricanes. And my fear is going into the playoffs and Jack Drury's your second center. Jack does a lot of really good things, but I also think he gets knocked around a little bit. Not quite there physically. I think Boone Jenner would be good with this team. That's my feeling about going into the trade deadline. But with all the stuff I just talked about, none of it matters unless Aho and Svechnikov become those guys. That's that. And always remember also, as we're going to kind of sign off here, always remember that our organization, right or wrong, and I think sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. If they wouldn't make the trade in July, they won't make it in March. So the inflated prices that a lot of teams pay at the deadline will not be paid by Tom Dundon and company. They will not do it. So that's where I stand. Fortunately, I don't believe we need to go get a goalie. Frederik Andersen is Carolina's insurance policy. I think it is worth noting that since the Ottawa game, this now 33 game stretch where Carolina is 22-6-5. Is that 33? It's 33 games. Best in the NHL. Since that Ottawa game, Pyotr Kochetkov, by any measure, is a top 10 NHL goalie. Pick it. Pick the measure. Goals against average, top 10. Save percentage, gosh, he's probably top 5. In this 33 game stretch, it's 19 starts for him. Goals saved above average, which I don't think I have to explain that. Pucks that probably should have gone in that don't because you're goalie. He is 8th best. It's a cumulative stat. He is 8th best in the NHL since December 12th. I ran those numbers just since December 12th. It's almost 6 goals saved above average. Now, he's not close to some of the guys who are really at the top, the Connor Hellebucks of the world. But 8th in the NHL in goals saved above average since the 12th of December. And it's a fairly sizable sample size at this point. It's not a full season. But I think Carolina's goaltending is, if I was doing their depth chart, I would say it's 52, 31, and Martin, 41 in reserve. And also know that Antti Raanta's recent playoff history for this team is great. So I don't think they're in the goalie market. I think if they added a defenseman, it would be somebody simply who has NHL experience, who can skate a little bit, who can honestly hide in the minor leagues. Remember, you can only carry 23 on the roster. And even if they were to get rid of Brendan Lemieux to add another forward, and I guess they could, I don't know that they will, you still can only carry 23. And if they carry 8 NHL defensemen, you can't carry 3 goalies. And the way Martin has played, you might not be able to get him through waivers no matter what kind of contract you attach to him. So if you're going to carry 3 goalies because you feel like you might need them, then you've only got 2 other roster spots to use. Right now, one is D'Angelo, the other is Lemieux. Certainly, you could see Lemieux being jettisoned for another player. I doubt it would be a defenseman at this point, but that's where I stand on all of that. And we'll get more clarity. I'm supposed to talk with Don Waddell on Saturday before Carolina plays Winnipeg. So maybe we'll have a little bit more detail for that. With all of that, I appreciate your time on the Canes Corner podcast. You can subscribe, like, whatever buttons you need to hit, caress, sidle up to, by all means, do it. Appreciate your time. We're brought to you by the Aluminum Company of North Carolina. If it's for the exterior of your home, you could go online, aluminumcompany.com. What does Run Fast want to say? I want Adam Gold to read me to sleep. that creeps me out. That creeps me out, Russ. Oh my gosh. I need to go shower now. I'm going to say thank you. I really don't know what it means. All right. We're brought to you by, all right. Yeah. Sammy Hanna's crew do a great job at aluminumcompany.com. They're going to appreciate that ad at the end of the spot. All right, everybody. We will see you on Saturday afternoon. It'll be late afternoon, usually when most of us take our nap, fall asleep in front of the TV watching golf. Bye.